Off-grid living. Many people have an interest in off-grid living. The lifestyle is romanticized on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. There's a lot of videos out there showing how great it is to be disconnected from the rat race, making your own electricity, having room to do whatever you want. No rules, being self-sufficient, maybe growing your own food, collecting your own rainwater. What would it be like to buy a piece of land, maybe even acreage, and then build an off-grid cabin, off-grid home, and then start your journey? But did you know it isn't that easy? Even if you have your own land and hundreds of acres potentially, you may not be able to live off-grid. The township or county that you are looking for land may not actually allow you to build something off-grid. You have to go through building permits, and you have to build certain size structures. You can't build a tiny home. There are many counties that you have to build a 700 plus square foot home. So if you want a 400 square foot off-grid cabin, you may not be able to do it. You've got to get special permits. And did you know you had to have building permits for your structure? It has to meet codes. You have to have it inspected along the way. And once you finish the process, only then do you get an occupancy permit. Yes, there's even many places that won't allow you to collect rainwater. Now, times are changing. These are slowly being allowed, but it depends on the county. It depends on the township or municipality that you're in. It's tougher than you think. You often have to build a certain size home, size structure. It's got to fit within different ordinances. So building tiny may not actually be legal. It's getting more common, but it's still not across the board. There are requirements for building, for living, a lot more requirements than most people realize. So I would highly recommend that you do your homework before you buy any piece of property. There might be more restrictions on it than you ever thought. They may make it impossible to have anything off-grid. I bought a piece of land and I wanted to build an off-grid property. I was looking for land in many, many, many places. And I found lots of great pieces of property. There were a lot of restrictions. After I did my homework and looked at the restrictions and the size restrictions, it just made it tough. After going through the process of finding the piece of property, scouting it out, looking at location, looking at resources, and then doing the homework on it, you had to condense it because the property was going quick. It was selling fast. So you had to do a lot of homework. Thank goodness to the web. You can research counties, communities, townships, whatever here in Michigan, and you can look at their building requirements and then realize, or then you look at the restrictions on the deed or in the community you're in, or call the building inspector. It's just tough. It is frustrating. It's tough. So do your homework, but it is possible to live off-grid. There are a lot of communities out there. There are a lot of states that make it easy to live off-grid. Well, I say easy. Easy and off-grid are not, it's kind of like jumbo shrimp. Really not true. So easy and off-grid are total opposites. To live off-grid, you have to do everything yourself. It requires a lot of work. So you're not plugging in to the electrical outlets, okay? At your consumer's energy or whatever energy system, you're not plugging in and getting electricity. You're not connected to the city or township water supply. You are getting your own water. You have either a well or you bring it in. You have a septic tank, and septic tanks have to go through the health department. Did you know they had to be certain codes? You can't just dump your waste somewhere. They have to go through a code process. They have to go through a perk process. There's process and legalities to live off grid. If you're lucky enough to live in one of the communities or states that allows you to actually collect rainwater and to have your off-grid solar system, and then you go through the sewer or septic process, and you can actually make that happen, and you can build. Living off-grid is a lot of work. Collecting your own rainwater, if you can do that and then purify it and then filter that system, it can be done, but it requires more work. It requires you to also kind of ration your water or manage your water. When we are connected to the city water system, you don't have to think about it. You turn your faucet on, water comes out. If you're living off grid, you have to think about all those things. How do you get the water? When do you get the water? And depending on climate, does your water freeze? How do you keep it from freezing? How do you store it? How long do you store it? How much water do you need? Do we get a lot of rainwater? Like, there's a lot of work that goes into off-grid living. Solar is becoming more and more common, easier to do. Individuals you can figure out solar on your own, but it still requires you to kind of manage the process. How much electricity will you need? What do you need it for? When do you get sun? I live in Michigan. We don't see a lot of sun. That's why we're cranky most of the time. We don't get energized by the sun. There are a lot of places that you can get a lot of sun, that you can live off of solar year round. There are a lot of other things that you have to figure out and get resource for. For food, are you going to grow food? Where are you going to store the food? How are you going to keep it away from critters? Like, all these things go into it. So living off grid is tough. You're never 100% off grid. Like, you're always going to be connected to something. You're listening to this right now on a tech device that's connected to the internet at some point. So how do you connect to the internet? How do you communicate? How do you do work? Those types of things, banking, whatever. So you'll need some type of connection or some type of resource or some type of way to get cell signal, to get internet. And that's becoming more and more common. You can get it in more and more places. There's not a lot of places that you're totally out of cell signal. There still are. My wife and I built a van, an off-grid van. I did not want to connect. I had campers. I didn't want to connect a camper or motorhome and have to plug it in somewhere. I wanted a vehicle that would allow us to camp in the city, in the country, out in the middle of nowhere, but also have the same comfort and resources that we were used to. So, a shower, a bathroom, a sink, a kitchen, a bed, and to kind of go anywhere. So I built a van, and I wanted it to be off-grid. So I didn't want it to plug in. I didn't have to worry. So mine runs off of solar. So I learned the solar system and how to work that whole system and how to build it into my van, which was the toughest part of the van build, was the electrical, figuring out the electrical. Thank goodness to YouTube. I learned a lot through YouTube. I put it together. I tested a few things out. I ran all that, and knock on wood, it's been perfect for us for several years. The solar system works great. So I built that into what I have is an off-grid cabin or an off-grid storage building. So in the community that I purchased land from, you need 700 and something square foot to build a home. I didn't want to build a home. I just wanted something that we could pull our van to, that we stay in, and have a place to hang out and store stuff. So in that county that I purchased my land in, anything under 200 square foot, you don't need a permit for. You can have a structure under 200 square foot that you don't need a permit for. but you don't get an occupancy permit. You can't live in it. You can just build this structure. So I actually built a structure just under 200 square foot, kind of 2 stories, but the second story is not livable space. It's storage space. The bottom is storage. It is not a structure to live in, even though if I had to, I 100% could live in this structure. Now, legally, I couldn't do that. But if something happened and you had to live there, it's got all the perks and all the benefits of a real home. I actually built it to code. I built it to withstand all of the elements. I built it to keep people warm or cool. But I built it as a big overbuilt storage unit. I had a neighbor that stopped in on me a few times, and he said I overbuilt a lot of things, and I'm sure I did. But I'm glad I did what I did. But it definitely got a lot of attention, and happens to be close to a road. It's close to a paved road. I only have 1 acre, so it stands out. So I've had to kind of defend my place a few times against the laws. And I am within the law, and my intention is not to live there. It is a storage building. It is a supplementary place to camp. But a place like that, if I wanted to build it bigger so it had more space, I'd have to pull a building permit, and I have to build it according to their guidelines, meaning so many square foot and so high and all those things. Setbacks. I'm within all of those, so I didn't violate any of that. So if I ever wanted to build, I could build it onto the house I was building or whatever. But it's a lot harder to live off grid than most people think. It's not easy. And usually people are skating under the law, if not violating the law in their community, because communities are not that friendly for off-grid living. States are starting to get there. Rainwater collection used to be illegal in many places. It is starting to become more legal. Solar power is becoming okay, but you actually have to fall within building codes and requirements to make it legal at all. Like, you have to look up your state, then you have to look up the county that you're in. Waste is always regulated. It's never an open door policy. It's usually dependent on the county, at least in Michigan. So it's living off grid. It is fun. It is a lot of work, and it takes a lot of research to figure these things out. So I would recommend you do your homework. If you're truly interested, if you want to prove it to yourself that you can do this, you can do this. It's just going to require a lot of work, but have fun.